Thank you. We have, this is taken from Shmois from the Chumash. In sentence 18, we have the first month of the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you shall eat the unleavened cakes, which is matzahs. So we have a mitzvah that on the Seder night of the 14th night of month of Nisan, we're commanded to eat matzahs. And this is something that men and women are equal, even though it's a mitzvah that is bound by time. However, the eating of the matzahs Seder night, that is something that is both for men and women equally a positive mitzvah. And the Torah also tells us that you cannot have any leavening in sentence 19. For 7 days, leavening should not be found in your house. Then sentence 20, you not eat any leavening throughout your dwelling. You should eat the unleavened cakes, which is matzahs. So the Torah tells us that you're not allowed to have any chametz, not allowed to have anything that is unleavened, it has to be removed. And it tells us that on the eating of the matzahs, Seder night, Torah tells us in sentence 17, Ushmartem es matzahs. You should watch over the matzahs that they should not become leavened. So this is called shmura, means to guard. So matzah shmura means guard matzahs or shmura matzah, matzah that was guarded. Either way it goes. So the Torah tells us to, while we're producing the matzahs, we have to be careful. There should be matzah and not unleavened in any way. The Zohar tells us about the eating of the matzah on the nights of Pesach. It is the bread of Amunah. It is the bread of faith. By actually eating the physical matzah, the Seder night, that itself strengthens our faith in our connection to Hashem. So each holiday has its specialty, special godly energy. When it comes to Pesach, the eating of the matzah is Emunah, faith. Also, we have the second night of Pesach. It's called Michla Mehemnusa, the food of faith, and also it's called Michla D'Hasvasa, the food of healing. So there's also a spiritual healing by the eating of the matzah when it comes to the Seder nights. By the Rebbe, he also used the fact that it is food of healing. To some people, he would give them matzah for their healing. So this was a physical healing as well. And there was the letters of the Rebbe. The one letter there's someone who wrote in a letter about their daughter. She was very ill. And the Rebbe answers, make sure that she eats a kazayas of matzah by the Seder, and that will bring her healing. Generally, when it comes to being careful about Pesach, so the Arizal says, whoever is careful but not having the minute amount of chametz during Pesach, so then Hashem helps them that they will not transgress unwittingly. Sometimes a person will do something not intentionally, but it will be done unwillingly, whether it is sometimes eating a food that did not have the proper hechsher, it was not kosher. So Hashem helps the person who is careful about not to have any chametz on Pesach, that they will not wind up with that product. Again, it doesn't take away a person's free will. Same thing, also no shogeg will be done. In other words, you have sometimes a person will do a malach on Shabbos, forgetting that it's Shabbos. So a person who's careful about not a minute amount of chametz during Pesach, that will not happen to them. Hashem will guard them again. Hashem will watch them. So the Torah tells us, you have to guard over the matzahs. And also the Torah tells us to eat the matzah on the Seder night. So the eating of the matzah is l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Did anyone hear that term? L'shem matzahs mitzvah, with intention that this act is going to be to produce matzahs that will be used for the mitzvah of Pesach. So this intention is done 11 times during the different steps that it takes to produce the matzah. So all of this is done with hashgacha, all of this is done with supervision, and what we're relying on is the best supervision as possible. You have the matzahs that are the machine matzahs. In that itself, you also have different standards. And then you have the hand matzahs. The Rebbe encouraged the hand matzahs, that's speaking about putting the maximum into the matzahs, that we should be able to get the maximum results. So the more you are careful about the production of the matzah, the more will be put into the matzah, that you will also get that maximum result of emunah and healing. So let's go through the steps that takes to produce the matzah. And I have here from, let's pull out this, thank you. This handout comes from the book of Rabbi Blumenkrantz, but every year he updates it with, it's a very interesting book. It has all the different products and guidance, instructions of which products are kosher for Pesach, whether it comes to cosmetics or other types of, other types of products, also the commercial products, and how to check for bugs, things of that's a very useful book. He gives out every year, it's given out a new edition. This is actually taken from the old edition, but I had in my house. So so now we have there are the 5 grains that are acceptable to be used for matzah. And they are wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. When I say these 5 grains, what does it tell you that you should be familiar with? That on these 5 grains, the bracha before is bezonos. And all other products with rice as a question, all other products get not the bracha of bezonos. So it would be, so these 5 types of grain have something special to them that other grains do not have. That is, when it comes in contact with water, there is the yeast that is in the grain that is released and it produces carbon dioxide. And when it builds up, whatever that product is, it starts to rise. That's when we have the dough, but when carbon dioxide is released and it rises, that's when it becomes chametz. So what we have to do is produce a matzah before it has a chance to rise, before the carbon dioxide is released. So this is what is going to be dealt with when it comes to the matzah bakery. So let's start off with the harvest. The harvest of the wheat is done during the summer. Mashgichim, the supervisors, are there on hand to supervise the harvesting of the grain. They usually have a farmer that they go to every year. He knows already what's expected of this farmer, and we check on the weather to make sure that it's not going to be raining, because we don't want, after the grain is harvested, they should not come in contact, from the time of harvest, they should not come in contact with water or moisture until the actual baking time. So we'll choose a very hot, sunny day. The harvesting will be done by a machine. And the Mashgiach says the first step is l'shem matzahs mitzvah. The intention is that this grain is going to be used for the mitzvah of matzah. Then, after it is harvested, after it is cut, usually it's cut when it's not fully ripe. Once it becomes ripe, the grain sometimes will split, which is a sign that it became already chametz. So now it is harvested, then it's threshed, the shell is removed, l'shem matzahs mitzvah. The next step is going to be that it's going to be sifted. All the impurities are going to be taken out, and then again, l'shem matzahs mitzvah. When the grain is then a clean product, it's stored in bins, and to make sure that no moisture comes in contact with it. It's taken to the mill, and there are different types of mills. There is the grinding, making from the grain into flour. Now, generally, before this is done throughout the year, they usually soak the kernels. Could we use that for Pesach? That's why we assume that all flour is chametz, because in the process, when it was milled, beforehand already it became in contact with water. We don't know what was the result of that, because now it's flour. We can't tell what happened to this, if it was chametz grains or not. So it will not. We cannot use the normal flour to bake their matzahs. It has to be one that we prepared and guarded for the making of the matzah. So now you have different standards of when they guard the kernels. There is shmur mishas ktsira. It is guarded from the time of harvest. And then there are those who have a lower standard. They will start guarding the kernels, which is shmura mishas tchina, guarded from the time of grinding, when it's made into flour. So you have different standards. Again, our standard is that the matzah that we buy here in Crown Heights, there's a mashgiach that is there, a supervisor that is there from the time of the harvest, saying l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So now the mill, there are three types of mills. The mill that is an electrical mill. Again, you have the grinding stones that crush it and makes it into flour. Then you have a water mill. Those are a mill that has grinding stones, and it is powered by the water. Did anyone ever see a water mill? It's an interesting thing. It has paddles outside that the water runs through it, and the paddles keep turning. Yeah. And inside there's this big grinding stones, and they grind it. So that is what it's. So it has to be cleaned for Pesach. Throughout the year, the mill is used for regular flour. So before Pesach, it has to be cleaned. You could imagine the cleaning that has to be done with the grinding stones in that whole area where there's a lot of dust. So all of this is cleaned, made for kosher for Pesach. Then there's another standard where you actually have a hand mill. You actually do it by hand yourself. There was a family in Crown Heights that I remember used to make their own matzah, starting from the harvest through all the steps in their basement. So before Pesach, the boys used to be, the boys in the family itself used to check each kernel to make sure that it didn't split. You can imagine how before Pesach, how much the family was involved in checking the grains that they're not split. That was a chore of the different members of the family. So I don't know if I think they still have, the family still bakes matzah, I guess, for the seder. So that's a hand mill. So you have the different standards with the mill. Generally, the mill that is used is the water mill. You're able to clean it well, the grinding stones, and make them kosher for Pesach. After the grain is made into flour, you put it into new sacks. So the truck that's going to transport it is going to be made kosher for Pesach, cleaned out well. It shouldn't have anything there from before. Put into new sacks. Also, there's a limit of how high you pack the sacks, one on top of the other, because if there's too much pressure, it heats up. We want the flour to be at the the best condition that it should not turn hot. So there's a limit of how high you stack the bags of flour. So now the flour is brought now to the bakery, and the bakery has a special place in the basement where they store, it's cool, dry, and that's where they store the sacks of flour. Again, a maximum of how many sacks go on top of the other. So now the flour is in the bakery, and now we're going to, so we have two ingredients. There's the flour, and there's also the water. Where do we get the water? So you have different sources. One source would be from the reservoir, rainwater, lake water, or river water, and there again, you would open your sink and get the water. Then there's the water that comes from the well.
From what?
A well.
What is it?
A well is you dig out the ground until you come deep into the ground, and then there's water there. So the water that is used for the matzah that is baked in Crown Heights comes from a well. And the well is next to 770. They spent a whole summer digging for water, and it was banging. They had this, the drill was banging a whole day. I was learning in 770 then, and it was like a headache. We kept pounding down that drill until it reached the level where there was water. So they actually have a well, and they use it for twice a year, once for the matzah that is baked, and also for tashlich. On Rosh Hashanah, we go to well water to say the tashlich prayer. So actually, they have for the women, they have like on the porch, they have like a place for water where you don't see it all year round. It's like an opening. If you look, and you see before Rosh Hashanah, they fill it up with water. They put in fish, and they have that for tashlich. So that's the well water that is used. So the well water also has to be drawn with the intention that it's going to be used for the matzah. And also it has to be mayim shalanu, water that rested overnight. So you will not use the water that was drawn that day, but rather at twilight, before night, you draw the water, put it into I would call it like, not jars, but these containers that will hold the water. And while you draw the water, you say, L'shem matzahs mitzvah. In many circles, they make a big festive occasion when the water of the matzah is drawn. The Rebbe would also participate in the drawing of the water, where they would bring that well water through a pipe, bring it up to the front steps of 770. The Rebbe used to have matzah that was baked for the Rebbe, that the Rebbe would distribute, and also send it to different communities from the matzah that was baked that the Rebbe participated in the baking. The Rebbe would draw the water, a certain amount of water, of mayim shalanu, say l'shem matzahs mitzvah, and also the Rebbe would separate the challah from all the matzah that was baked on his behalf. He would separate that, he would make the bracha on the separation of challah. They would bring it to the Rebbe's, the room next to the Rebbe's office. They would cover it all up and make it into one batch, and the Rebbe would separate the challah from it. And so now we have the mayim shalanu, the water that is going to stay overnight. Again, the water has a certain energy. We want to keep it at the maximum opportune conditions. So therefore, the water has a certain energy that will warm up the product that it comes in contact to, unless from the well, it will rest for 12 hours. So at least 12 hours before the baking of the matzah, the water was drawn and it's left there overnight. So now we have again l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Now we're ready for the baking of the matzah itself. And the bakery is prepared the night before, that it is cleaned from anything that was done from the day before. Whatever was done that day, again, there was chametz there because not everything was baked, a lot of dough fell on the floor, whatever it was, they make the bakery kosher for Pesach. all new papers that line the walls inside the room where the flour is kept, the place where the water is kept, everything is changed. Now, the making of there's a step where we're going to make the dough. It's number one, making the dough. Then number two is rolling out the dough. Number three is they're going to perforate the dough. Did you see that the matzah has holes? They were made. So you have a special zipper that zips across the matzah. It's very nice to watch. If you'll have a chance to see it, it's just nice how the ones who do it are professional, and they zip it through, and the matzah sort of fly up, zip, zip. It's it's a contraption that also has metal little bites, and it makes the holes. What's the purpose for the holes of the matzah? Not to rise. When you put it in the oven, it wouldn't have holes. You'd get bowls of matzah. Instead of getting flat matzah, you'd get bowls. And also, all the moisture could escape through these holes. So it bakes it evenly. So we had the making of the dough, the rolling of the dough, making the holes, and then actually putting it into the oven. So the making of the dough. So you have two rooms. One room is where the flour is kept, and it's a little cubicle that has a little window. And then there's the room where the water is kept. It's a cubicle, and it has a little window. Now, in the center is you have a mixing bowl. That's where the one who is making the dough is going to be standing there and to mix the dough. So everything is done with a measure. The amount of flour that is needed to be able to separate challah, anyone knows how many pounds to make a bracha? How many pounds of flour is used to be able to make a bracha?
5 pounds?
Between 4 and 5 pounds. Now, taking a dough that's 4 and 5 pounds, you're not being able to really mix it well and be able to constantly work this dough because it's too bulky and too big. So what you have to do is you have to reduce it. So the dough that is going to be made is between 2 pounds and 2.5 pounds. That is small enough that you're able to mix the flour and the water very, very well, that it becomes a dough. And after it becomes a dough, you constantly are able to work it and reach all areas of this dough. So once it becomes a dough, as long as you work it, it's not going to rise because the carbon dioxide does not have a time to collect. So that has to be small enough that you should be able to work it. So we're not able to separate challah from that amount. Halachically, if you take matzah and put that into a container, it unites everything that is there. So then when you're going to be baking a number of batches of matzah, where now you're going to be having the amount of matzah that is the 5 pounds or the 4 or 5 pounds, you can combine them all in one container, and you're going to then separate the challah, which is going to be already baked out. You're going to take a size of matzah, an actual matzah, and make the bracha, and then break that matzah and say, Harei ze challah, this is challah, and that will be put away, and it's going to be burnt at the end of the day. So now we have the flour at night is. So let me speak about the standard that our yeshiva has that we bake as a group. So our standard is that we make we send in the crew that's going to be participating in cleaning the bakery for the next day's baking. So the boys of the yeshiva go in, and they also do all the lining and cleaning and washing and changing everything that whatever they could see that could be covered, they cover it up. They really do an extra good job. And then the flour is sifted again the night before. So you have the volunteers who wear again the mask, and while they're sifting it, they say l'shem matzah's mitzvah. It's done for the matzah mitzvah. Then we also have a standard that we wash the mixing bowl after each use. So halachically, if the conditions are ideal, if you have a dough that is left to stand, so it will not rise until after 18 minutes, even if you did not work it. So in this bakery, every 16 minutes, everything stops. All the mixing bowls are cleaned, the rolling pins are cleaned, the paper that lines the table is removed and replaced. The perforator, the one that makes the holes, you have two of them. One of them is kosher, while the new one is now used. So everything is changed after 16 minutes. And then they start giving, everything is fresh again after 16. New mixing bowl, new rolling pins, and the new perforator, new paper, and new sticks that are going to be the rolling sticks, and also the sticks from which you're going to be hanging the matzah to put it into the oven. That also is going to be changed every 16 minutes. However, in our yeshiva, we have a standard that the rolling pins are changed after each use. So they're circulated. You have those who are the ones who are doing the rolling, and then you have those who are taking the matzah with a roller and replacing it with a fresh roller. So after every matzah, the person who is rolling the dough gets a fresh stick to roll the dough. That's an extra standard. What's done with the sticks is they are sanded, wiped, and put back into circulation. So you have about 300 sticks that are in circulation during a day. So let's start with the making of the matzah. So you have the cubicle that opens up for the flour. He puts it in the mixing bowl, closes the cubicle, that when he's going to pour the water, is going to be poured. It should not come into the flour room. So he closes this window. Then the other window opens up for the water. And also the water is measured and weighed, just how much water should go with the flour. So everything is proportional. It should come out just right. So pouring in the water, you say l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Then the flour and water is mixed by the person who does the mixing. He does a very thorough job. Then he makes it into a dough. It's given to someone who's constantly going to work the dough, and he's going to distribute it to the ones who are doing the rolling. Here in our bakery, you have a long table. You have the rollers who are standing on both sides of the table, and then there's the person who's holding the dough, distributes balls of dough to the ones who are going to do the rolling. And usually you will hear the whole group together saying l'shem matzahs mitzvah. If it is the beginning of every 16 minutes, they will again proclaim l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So it's nice to hear the whole group all calling out l'shem matzahs. The mashgiach says, everyone together, Allah zusammen, l'shem matzahs mitzvah. So that's very nice to see, to be there. And then the matzah is then rolled out, put on the stick, and then someone takes from the stick and puts it on the table where it's going to get perforated. It's perforated, and then there are long sticks hanging. And the matzah, you hang over these sticks. So now you have about 5 matzahs on the stick. And then you have in a separate, like the division where the furnace is. The furnace is a coal wood furnace. Again, it's up to the baker who's actually doing the baking to determine how hot it should be. Usually it's about 900 degrees according to what's written in this pamphlet. So it's about 900 degrees. And it takes about, so again, the one who's going to put the matzah into the oven says l'shem matzahs mitzvah as he puts it in. How long do you think it takes to bake? How long does it take to bake? Any idea? How long does it take for the matzah to bake?
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
How many seconds?
18 seconds.
No, it doesn't take 18 seconds. It takes about from 30 to 45 seconds.
Oh, wow.
We speak about 900 degrees.
Oh, okay.
So the baker is the one who sees when the matzah is ready. You shouldn't take it out too early or not too late. Takes out too late, you get burnt matzahs. Takes out too early, you get matzahs that are bendable. And you really, and what happens is the bendable matzahs, when they're let to stand, they harden. And that's what makes the matzahs hard, because it's still have more inside that was it was not fully released. And because of that, when it dries, it becomes goodness. So it's up to the baker that he should take it out the right time, that it should be fully baked, not to burn. Then you get crisp, nice matzahs.
What do they do with the matzahs that are bendable, they get hard after? Can they be used?
Yes, it could be. The baker took it out when it was already baked. I mean, there's no. Now, what happens is Hashem made it so that the possibility it become everything is. Put it on mute.
That'll be you. Whoever's on Zoom, you're not muted. I don't know if I can mute them.
So
Okay, they're muted now.
so those matzahs are could be used. So what happens is once it goes into it gets such an intense heat, it destroys the ability to it become chametz. So really, after it was baked out well, it should not become chametz, even if it becomes wet. However, if it wasn't baked out well and you're going to make it wet, they could start the chametz process. Another thing is, if there's so whatever is made into a dough, that flour and water combination has a certain something that's called B amylase. That's what makes the carbon dioxide. In intense heat, it destroys that B amylase. It no longer is going to have that capacity to make chametz, to ferment. However, it's only if it was done completely. Now, if there's any sprinkling of flour that is still raw, and that still has potential to become chametz when it will become wet. So ideally, whoever mixes the flour and water does a good job that there's no pockets or no sprinklings or no any part of flour that was not really mixed with the water that was not fully baked. If not so, then it is such a possibility. Now, I've been with the matzah bakery for many, many, many years. And I've been teaching about you have to be careful. Sometimes there will be a flour layer on the matzah. And I said to myself, it never happens. Whenever I say that, Hashem shows me that it could happen. So I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I did see a matzah that did have that, that floury, still, that wasn't really fully mixed. And I said to myself, I think that's the only time that something like that ever happened, because all the years that I was there, I checked the matzahs. So you have to check the matzahs for our group. So you have to check the matzahs that there's no folds, because wherever there's a fold, it doesn't bake out well underneath, because so no folds. And also, there should not be any bubbles. Sometimes when you put it in a little too late, it bubbles up. That matzah already started breaking out, so that matzah would be put away. If you do have a bubble, if it's as big as an acorn, so then that part has to be broken off and discarded. You say that's chametz. If it's less than that, then it's fine. So this is something that, again, I never saw the flour dusting. One time I did see it, and that was for me a lesson that don't say that nothing ever happens. So I did have once also 2 more times. I don't know if I should share it with the class. I was teaching about about checking for insects. And then I said, when you open up a pepper, then the bell peppers, you should check inside that there's no insects. Did you ever see an insect? Did you ever see a worm inside a bell pepper? Yes, no, nice said again. Never saw it. And guess what?
The next pepper
that I had, there was something that you couldn't miss. It was this big. So I certainly saw it. Another thing that I also was teaching about, there's sable, carp sable. It's a white, it's an expensive cut. They usually serve it they used to serve it by brisson. And when you have so it's carp sable, a white fish that you cut, and it's, so there I was teaching that you have to check when you're eating it, there's a white worm that sometimes is found in the carp sable. It's in the skin itself. Now, I've been eating carp sable with Tibrisib. It's very popular. I don't see it as much now. They serve lox instead. But anyway, carp sable was a very popular thing.
Very expensive.
And I said to myself, doesn't happen. Guess what?
The next time you had it?
Next time I had it, I was looking for it.
Okay.
And I did see something white, a
I've
string.
never
It
seen
looks
a
like a
white.
string of white. Again, so you just have to know that there's a string of white that's inside the flesh. It doesn't belong there. So Hashem shows me, and I say it doesn't happen, and especially if I'm teaching it, so I don't put my heart into it because I say it doesn't happen. I'm just mentioning it because that's what it says you should say. But so whenever it says about something, then you have to keep your eyes open, and Hashem helps you that you find it what's something that doesn't belong.
Is there any
So-
worms or anything in lox that you've ever seen?
No.
Lox of them.
So this is the this is the process that you see. It's beautiful. What I'd like to see is how everything is very hurried. Everyone's really moving. I also like to see how they make the holes in the matzah where it just flies. And you go zip, the matzah just flies up. And then he catches it and puts it on he zips it up. Another person catches it and puts it over hangs it over the pole. So you have about 5 matzahs on a pole. The person who puts it in the oven, it's fascinating just to watch, to see how it goes into the oven. The flames are there, you have its coals, it's wood, and it's really like beautiful to watch and gaze and observe. And at every point, so there are 10 times that I've mentioned, you say the Shem Matzah Mitzvah, and the 11th time is when the person is eating the matzah. You should have in mind the Shem Matzah Mitzvah, that he's doing the mitzvah of eating the matzah for the Seder night. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful. Seeing what, again, there is, it's alluded to that the matzahs should be round. It says ugas matzahs. The matzahs were made in cookie forms. So cookie was a round cookie. So the matzahs were meant to be round. And they also have the significance of all the things that you will be learning in Chassidus about the idea of an eagle, a circle that is unlimited because it doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end, which is Ein Sof. It is the unlimited, endless. And that is also the matzah that we are eating. The Emunah is connected to Ein Sof, higher than reason, which is a Seif Kalam, if you have that term. So that's where the matzahs come from. So, okay, so let's see. I left you out. Your name is
Sharon.
Your last name?
São Paulo. Joe and N-T-G. Sharon. How do you call it? Sharon. Rabbi Baras, I have a question over here.
One moment.
Okay.
Are you visiting or are you part of the class? Or what's
I'm part of the
part of
class.
the class? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that also used the right shampoo, like the Sprite in showers?
Let me look into it. I know what you're asking. Yeah, let me find out.
And
Okay.
I have one alcohol, sorry, talco. I
It'll be the same idea.
Ah.
Same idea. Okay, so powdered shampoo.
I ever used it, I didn't use it.
Okay, so let me find out what's the. What it is about.
It's looking good. Yeah.
Okay, again, your name?
She didn't go in salon.
No, I don't.
Oh, no.
Sol, S-O-L.
Okay.
Do you go each other's kitchen? You know?
Are you coming to
I don't even know.
It's showing.